In 1930s Hungary, a song began to sweep through the streets of Budapest, but it didn't bring joy. According to police reports from the time, a housekeeper was found dead from poison with a copy of the sheet music nearby. A man walked into a local club, asked the band to play a specific melody, and then stepped outside and shot himself. Across the city, people were found in the Danube, clutching the lyrics to a song called Shamor Vasarna. Is it possible for a melody to be so haunting that it literally drives people to the edge? Today, we re-diving into the dark history and the chilling urban legend of Gloomy Sunday, the song they called the Hungarian Suicide Song. Echoes of a Song, The Curse of Gloomy Sunday. Welcome back. If you're a fan of music history with a dark twist, you're in the right place. Today we're exploring one of the most infamous pieces of music ever written. You might have heard it covered by Billie Holiday or Björk, but the origins of Gloomy Sunday are far more tragic than a simple heartbreak ballad. For nearly a century, this song has been shrouded in a curse that allegedly claimed over 100 lives. But where does the legend end and the history begin? Today, we're going to look at the life of its tortured composer, the real reason the BBC banned it, and the social crisis that turned a sad song into a scapegoat for a national tragedy. The birth of a melancholy masterpiece. Our story begins in 1933 with a man named Rezső Seress. He was a self-taught pianist living in Paris, struggling to make it as a songwriter. He was a tiny man barely over 5 feet tall, and by all accounts, he was deeply unhappy. The world in 1933 was a grim place. The Great Depression was suffocating Europe, and the shadow of the First World War still loomed large while the Second was beginning to stir. Seress sat down at his piano and composed a melody that captured that exact feeling of hopelessness. Interestingly, there are 2 versions of the lyrics. Seress's original poem was titled The World is Ending, and it was about the despair of war and sin. But it was the second version, written by his friend Laszlo Javor, that turned it into the legend we know today. Javor's lyrics shifted the focus to a lover whose partner has died, and his plan to join them in the afterlife on a gloomy Sunday. It was a perfect storm of sadness. But when the song was released in Hungary, something terrifying started to happen. The suicide reports. Within months of the song's release, the press in Hungary and across Europe began reporting a bizarre pattern. They claimed the song was killing people. Let's look at the evidence they cited. There was a woman in London who reportedly overdosed while listening to the record on repeat. In Vienna, a teenage girl supposedly drowned herself while holding the sheet music. One of the most famous stories involves a restaurateur in Budapest who heard the song on the radio and ended his life shortly after. Even Seress's personal life wasn't spared. Legend says his ex-girlfriend, the woman who inspired the lyrics, killed herself and left a note that simply read, Gloomy Sunday. Have you ever heard a song that completely changed your mood? I want to hear from you in the comments. Is there a song you find so depressing you actually have to turn it off? Or do you find comfort in sad music? Let's talk about it below. The BBC ban and the global panic. The panic grew so intense that it reached the highest levels of broadcasting. This isn't just an urban legend. The BBC actually took action. For decades, the BBC banned the vocal version of Gloomy Sunday. They didn't necessarily believe in a curse, but they officially stated the song was too depressing for the public to hear during wartime. They felt it would damage the morale of the British people. Think about that, a piece of music deemed a threat to national security because of its emotional weight. You could play the instrumental version, but the lyrics were considered too dangerous for the airwaves. This ban wasn't fully lifted until 2002, debunking the curse, the reality of Hungary. Now, we have to look at this through a critical lens. Was the song actually cursed, or was it a victim of circumstance? At the time, Hungary had one of the highest suicide rates in the world. The country was reeling from political instability, extreme poverty, and the looming threat of Nazi Germany. People were already in a state of despair. Historians argue that Gloomy Sunday didn't cause these deaths. It simply became the soundtrack for them. If someone is already at their breaking point, they might gravitate toward art that reflects their pain. The press, looking for a sensational story, connected the dots and created the suicide song narrative to sell papers. T's a classic case of correlation versus causation. But for the composer, the legend became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The tragic end of Rezső Seress. Rezső Seress lived a life defined by this one song. He survived the Holocaust in a labor camp, but his mother did not. After the war, he returned to Budapest, but the communist government didn't approve of his decadent music. He lived in poverty, working as a diver at a theater and playing piano in a small restaurant. He was haunted by the fame of Gloomy Sunday. He once said, "I stand in the midst of this deadly success as an accused man." In 1968, at the age of 68, Seress attempted to end his life by jumping out of a window. He survived the fall, but later in the hospital, he finished what he started. It has a tragic end that the cursed believers use as their final piece of evidence. But in reality, it was the end of a man who had seen too much horror and felt too much sorrow. Gloomy Sunday remains a haunting masterpiece. It's a reminder of how deeply music can tap into the human psyche. Whether it was a curse or just a mirror held up to a broken world, its legacy is undeniable. If you found this deep dive into music history fascinating, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next exploration into the world's most mysterious songs. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes a song is just a song, but sometimes it's an echo of something much deeper. I'll see you in the next one.